I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Great to have you. My guest is Peter Mutabazi, who has one of the wildest and most beautiful stories coming from a very destitute situation to the man you will see today. And we'll cover some of that, but before I get going, I wanted to show you the program that he was on with Sheila Walsh and I on the broadcast show on Life Today. Back in August of 2022. That's a shot of it on YouTube. You can get that at lifetoday.org. You can find it on YouTube as well. But so if you want to get into Peter's story, and you'll understand why I'm saying this, you can go back and find that program. But today we're going to talk about a new book that just dropped recently. And when I saw this, I did a double take on the title. This is the book, Love Does Not Conquer All. And I was like, wait, does not conquer all? I'm like, is that in the Bible? I was like, what's going on here? Well, he's going to explain that, and you'll get a clear picture of what he's talking about. But if you are a parent, if you're going to be a parent, and especially if you are a foster parent, I think you're going to get some insight today that will encourage you, maybe help you. Because it's a tough, parenting is just a tough job. But foster parenting brings a whole new set of complexities, and Peter's got some experience that most of us don't have. Peter, good to see you again. Welcome back to Life Today Live.
Well, thank you for having me here. Truly a joy to be back.
So let's start with the title, because I know you're getting this reaction, I'm sure, all the time. People are like, wait a minute, what are you saying here? This is a Christian book, right? What do you mean love does not conquer all? And is that in Scripture?
Well, absolutely. I think for me as a parent, you hear people say, just love on them, and for me being a foster parent, I realized that wasn't enough, that I needed to work on myself, my own trauma, that be prepared to truly be a parent to the child who's coming from a difficult place, but also understand trauma. So yes, I could love them every day, but I needed to understand where they're coming from. In that way, it prepared me to be the best parent I can be by allowing myself to meet them where they're at, rather than I'm just going to love them. That's not enough. But that had so much that I needed to learn about my children, but also to learn about myself. So that's why I gave it a title. Love doesn't conquer. Like, yes, we can love them, but it really takes more than that in order to parent a kid, any child from a hard place, or even bio parents. So I wrote this mainly for foster parents and adoptive parents, or anyone who wants to be a parent. Like, hey, before I became a parent, like, there are lessons I wish I knew, that I wanted to prepare someone else who's not a parent yet, or who's in the midst of it and wondering, is this going to come to the end? That I wanted to show the glimpse of hope that I was given by learning and growing and meeting my children as who they are rather than who I wanted them to be.
So and that's actually one of the chapters in your book, and a really great point, because we love children for who they are, like you said, and not who we want them to be. And that's a tough one, because we want to shape them, we want to develop them, we want them to become, good people, godly people. But those expectations can actually cause a pressure and a rebellion if we're not careful. Man, I've seen that in ministry my whole life. So just to answer the question, technically, love conquers all is not in the Bible, but there are certainly scriptures that could lead you to that conclusion. But it's mainly God's love in the context that eventually conquers all sin, all death, that kind of thing. But when you talk about in the context of parenting, especially children coming from traumatic situations, what's the alternative? To not love the child? Obviously, that's not the case. But so how do you find that love within yourself when the child doesn't seem to be responding to it?
Right. And that's the key, that's the key that, that really what's love. And love isn't conditional, but also love is when we love children as who they are and we accept their trauma, we accept their behaviors, we accept their outbursts, that we get to have empathy, that empathy that allows us to love them as who they are,
Mm.
you know? And I think that's what I was trying to drive to, that with empathy, you get to love a child. And that's why I give you an example. For example, I got a kid who went to the bathroom and did number two and picked it up and smeared it in my bathroom. And I wondered, man, this is going to be an expensive child to have.
Mm.
And my ultimate was, I'm going to call CPS because there's no way I can take care of this child. But once I got to know the reason why he was doing so, it really helped me have empathy towards the child. I did not make that phone call, but at the same time, that I really understood why he was doing whatever he was doing. That it had nothing to do with the smelling of my bathroom or my house, but it really had to do with protecting himself. And that really helped me to really understand that, man, I'm gonna love this child beyond what I thought I signed up for because I had empathy of what was causing him to do so. And that's why I wrote to the parents like, hey, before we can judge the parents or before we can decide based on their behaviors, but rather when we dig deep down and understand the reason why they do, we get to have empathy. And our conditional love is much greater with better understanding than just a blanket of love.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously best to deal with the root problem than the symptoms and the acting out a lot of times. And that can be hard for a parent because you respond to the action when you don't dig down to what's really going on. Okay, so for people that don't know your backstory, and also to explain your accent a bit, because you live in North Carolina, but you don't sound like most North Carolinians. Explain to people just quickly a little bit of your road from Uganda to how you got here.
Well, absolutely, yes. I am originally from Uganda and grew up poor of the poorest from an abusive family. And I ran away and became a street kid where I faced abuse in every shape, form you could imagine. And the worst of all, until I met a stranger who I was trying to steal from. And instead of seeing a thief, instead of seeing a smelling teenager, but he saw a little boy with potential that I didn't even know I had any potential. And he changed my life. He put me in school. He showed me Christ. And that really changed me that I went to school in Uganda, went to school in England, and that's how I came to the United States. So for me, writing this book is really also, rejoining myself, like going back and say, how I wish there was a parent who loved me from who I was rather than who they wanted to be. And I think that's how that man loved me,
Yeah.
and that's how he cared for me. And that's what helped me to be a foster dad in a way that I get to reflect on my own childhood and say, this is how I reacted. This is how I felt when someone was kind to me meant danger, and to make sure that I get to do that for my children, that when I get to see things that are hard in some way, but I get to remind myself that someone helped me overcome this. And that way I get to do that for the children in foster care. So that's a little bit of my background, and that's what led me to truly being a foster dad because I wanted to do what someone did for me when I was a little boy.
One of the things you say is that acting out, and I'm guessing this is from your personal experience as a child and probably as a foster parent, that acting out can be a sign of trust, and that's the complete opposite of what most people would think. How does that work?
Right, absolutely. I think as a foster parents, and adoptive parents and a foster parent, that when we parent, we have to kind of parent out of the box, that we do the opposite of what is normal. Our kids, where they come from, what's normal to us is abnormal to them. And what we think is normal, it's abnormal to them. So in some way, to really parent outside the world that we know. It's easy to hug a child. I was never hugged as a little boy. So if you hugged me, that meant you wanted something more than I could give. That was bad, So hugging me, to me was a negative side. If you gave me something to eat, well, that meant that maybe later you're going to harm me in some way. But so are our children. They have learned behaviors along the way to protect themselves that sometimes seem abnormal, but as we parent them, we really get to really use what, in some way, yes, understand that what's abnormal for them, but you gotta show them normal as you get to love them as who they are, that you get to parent where they are. And with time, they get to see what normal is. I didn't know any parent in my entire life who sat on the table with the same with their parents. To me, my father was always the time he would beat us. So sitting by the table was danger. Man who took me in, slowly, it took them a while, but every time I sat on the table, I waited for him to do something bad. Along the way, I realized like, wait a minute, but this is normal, actually, that what is showing me is normal. And that really helped me to pursue that normalcy, which was abnormal for me. But because of time and consistency, it really helped me understand what was abnormal, how it became normal for me.
So is that really the secret to building trust, especially when you have a child who comes from a traumatic situation that you may not even know all the details? Is it the time and consistency? Is that really the only way to build the trust that has to be built?
Well, absolutely, yes. One, you have to create a space. My job is not to heal my children. My job is not take away the trauma, but my job is to create a space for them to be able to process their healing. So that starts with where they are in my home. And along the way, we're going to figure out how we can truly help them. And also, too, every child has their own way on how they do that. To some, it might take 6 months. To others, it might take a year. So it's really I have to go on the parents' timetable, not my timetable. And along the way, we get to change them. We get to help them. We get to show them what normalcy is. When we stay consistent, and along the way, it really changes their lives. And that's what that person did for me. And that's what I get to see in my kids as well. They come home, they steal food, they hide it. And then within 6 months, 7 months, they're not doing it anymore. Why? Because we were consistent in really changing why. Why do they hide food? Because they are worried there's no food tomorrow. So what things can I do today that will help my child not worry that that food is going to run away? Well, it doesn't happen overnight,
No.
Time they get there. And that's really what it takes to parent a child, but to go on their timetable by providing them resources that will change the way they think.
So your personal situation, how many children have you fostered and how many have you adopted?
So I have fostered 47 children as of today.
Wow.
Right now I have 6. I've adopted 3, and I'm in the process of adopting the other 3 as well, which is a joy.
How? Yeah, a joy. It is also a lot. That is a lot of responsibility. Is this just something that God's put on your heart, or is this sort of paying back the kindness that was done for you? What's in it for you?
Well, I think for me, for what I went through, I think it really prepared me for this. This is my calling. Foster care is not everyone's calling. It is hard, and it's a hard journey that you have to deal with a lot of headache and trauma. But I think for me, having or walked or journeyed or really faced the same challenges as my children, that for me, I found a way to really be the best parents I can be, because I get to glean on my past. And in some way, to me, this is my calling, that I feel it's my calling to love on their bio parents as well. Sometimes we get to see them as villains. Well, that's how someone saw my mother, but my mother was facing the same abuse that I received. So for someone to say she was a bad mom, in some way, they don't really understand. And so for me, being a foster parent, I knew that I can really come in a place where I can journey with people, inspire others, but also show that if I can overcome these, that we can help so many other children to overcome what they've endured. And also having a good attitude towards their bio parents, rather than see them as villains, but really see them as parents who lacked resource, and along the way they lost the train of being mom and dad.
Yeah, wow, that's a whole other dynamic. All right, this is the book Love Conquers All. I'm sorry, Love Does Not Conquer All. See, it's a habit to say it that way. And you can get it wherever you get books. And if you're an adopted parent, I'm an adoptee. So I certainly appreciate any help you can give to adoptive parents. My parents did a wonderful job, fortunately. But with the 47 children now, yes, what you do is an expression of love. But I have to ask, do you always like them?
There's a chapter in that book which says you'll not always like your children. Sometimes I would drive and I wish I could just drive and not come back. I mean, that's my honesty. As a parent, that sometimes there are days where it's so difficult and you're like, did I sign up for this? Or am
Mm,
I sure I'm doing the right thing? But I think along the way, I've seen that's the pain I caused to my family that took me in. But also for me, I reflect that to my faith as well. And I think sometimes that's how I give a really hard time to my Lord, and but he doesn't respond with anger, but in some way he's loved me through the same that I need to extend to my children, to love them at their lowest, because that's how God loves us. But also too, that's how that stranger loved me. When I stole something, he gave me the extra of what I stole. I'm like, why
mm,
why? But along the way, I got to realize that, man, he wanted to love me at my lowest. And it's the same way that I have to extend that towards my children as well, to love them
yeah.
despite of what they're going through, despite of the challenge at their lowest, that I get to extend my love the higher.
If we look at love as a feeling, and there is a feeling associated with it, I'm not denying it, but if we look at it purely that way, then I think we'll see how it will wax and wane. It'll come and go. There will be good days and bad days. But a biblical way to look at love, and I think this is God's love towards us, if we view it as a commitment, then the commitment doesn't change. The commitment's unwavering, even when behaviors are not right, when things are difficult. And that's what I hear. And I think the commitment side, I would say, it'll conquer everything. The feelings will come and go, but when you commit, and that's what I see. I mean, you talk about days where you just want to kind of keep driving, and every parent has that, whether adoptive, foster, or just a parent, you have those days. But how important is it for you to go back to the commitment you've made, not just to these children, but to God in that role?
Absolutely. That one day I woke up and I did all the training, I signed all the documents, and I said, I abide to train and to do everything that I can to love and protect this child. That is a commitment that I made. And to make sure that the child did not, because the child did not choose to be born in a home where they were.
Yeah.
I chose to. So when they bring them to my home, they didn't choose my home. They were literally almost, I feel like, forced to come to my home. So the expectation changes when hey, this kid did not choose to be in my home. This kid was taken away from the people he loved the most. And for me, it was a commitment that I made. So in some way, it really gives me an opportunity to know that despite of what the good and the bad are gonna come, I signed up that I will uphold to protect this child, but also to see them as God sees them. He's commanded us to love my children as who they are, that I want to do the same for them. And yes, you're right, it's a commitment. And also I think when you put the commitment and love, you really get to see why you stood up to do that commitment.
Mm,
That I signed up to say, I'll be the best parent I can be. And along the way, when the difficulties come, to say, in the difficulties, how can I be the best parent that I signed up to be, that I committed myself to be, but also that I got to learn that what my children go through, when that shows up, that I don't walk away, but I show up even the more. And I think that has really helped me to know that, yes, I've been trained on trauma, not all the trauma, but when it shows up, to say, this is what I signed up for. This is the commitment that I did, that I made, that I'm going to abide to be there for my children, no
yeah.
matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing, an admirable thing. I am curious, you being from Uganda, now living in North Carolina, there's some cultural gap there, right? Does that create another set of problems when you're talking about an African man fostering children in North Carolina? I'm guessing not all of your children are African or African American.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I have 6 kids and 5 of them are Caucasian and one African American children. Yes, we've had difficulties, both mostly outside. For
Yeah.
the kids, when they come home, they're looking for a dad. They're not looking for a black dad. They're just looking for someone who loves them. And also it's rare, 95, almost 98% of our children in foster care have never had a dad. So
Mm,
for them coming to me, I think that has really been a joy for them. Like, wow, we got a dad that we never thought we could have. But I think for me, the hardest part is the outside. I've been called on, I think about 11 times by the police, that we go to the grocery store and someone will call the police. And I think for me as a believer, I've come to really learn to say, look, God called me to do this. This is my commitment. This is my calling I love. But I'm not going to let the outside world negativity in some way hinder me for what I signed up to do. So when someone calls the police, yeah, sure, that I have all the documents to show, but not really take it personal, because I can never change their attitude towards me. I can never change, but at the same time, I'm hoping that one day I'll change the narrative of what they think of me. That I'll change that, but by me being faithful first, but not really letting the side gong in someone get in the way, but somewhere to say, God, I want to be faithful to what you call me to do. But along the way, those challenges, I am willing to meet them, but also make sure that they don't get in the way as well.
See, what I love about that aspect, and I hate that you have to go through that because it is the result of a sinful world that rejects biblical truth, because the biblical truth is there is no such thing as race. God created people, and there are people, and we have different color, hair, and eyes and skin, and some are tall, some are short. I mean, we have physical attributes. But to make the physical attributes our identity is where it goes way wrong, and where the beauty of God's variety in his creation becomes, I believe, an idol. And you see the results of that because the world teaches you to think in those terms, but you don't. You see yourself as God sees you, and you see your children as God sees them, and that's the beauty of what you're doing and what you're creating there. And unfortunately, we live in a world that just does not understand that identity. They create identities and all sorts of false idols, in my opinion. So I am sorry that you go through that. I hate it for you. But God bless you for standing on his truth, because that's what those kids need to see, and that's what the world needs to see.
Yes, absolutely. And two, there's some who do it out of ignorance, and I'm trying to really show them, we went to Costco the other day and someone said, hey, I'm not going to feed you kids until you go get mom and dad. And I was standing right there and my kids are like, but he's right here. What do you mean? And I was able to know like, hey, these moments are moments I can change the narrative. And so I approached it. I said, hey, next time, don't assume, just ask. And I'll say yes or no. Are you the dad? I'll say yes or no. And then I turned around, I said, hey, if I was white, would you have asked the same question? And she said, no. And I said, why? She said, well, because I see them all the time here, but your family complex, I had never seen it before. And for me, those were like beautiful moments to say, well, I'm your first example. So hopefully I am your start, that you never do that to someone else, that you'll ask a question. And for me, walked out pride and happy that, you know what? We got to make a difference by really explaining. And now that lady, every time we go in, she gets to know us. And she said, hey, my family, but I could have made it a big deal, which wasn't unnecessary. And those are the ways that I'm learning, changing someone's narrative by really following what God's call has called you to do. In the midst of that, who are you going to be, and in some way to truly be what my kids think of. You're my dad, you protect me. And so when it goes outside, I want to still do the same, truly fight for my kids, but also change the narrative of what they think of family, because God called us to save. And the other part, really educate people that, hey, my kids were left at the hospital. My kids were left at the police. What should I have done in your case? Like, help me understand. And they always say, of course, you take them in. Of course.
Yeah.
And I say, that's exactly what I do.
Wow.
I signed up for every child, all children who are vulnerable, that I will provide for a home if I do have space.
Jeez. Wow. The grace. Peter, I mean, I don't know what Mutabazi means in Kampala, but it means grace here in America, because you are an expression of God's grace. And I got to tell you, man, it's a beautiful thing. I want to show people your website real quick. This is petermutabazi.com, and you can catch up with him. He's got stuff on the book. He's got other resources there. So if you want to follow up with Peter, do that. And again, the book is available. And if you're a foster parent, an adopted parent, or just a parent just dealing with children, there's some really strong truth in this, and as you can tell by now, Peter doesn't deal with the nonsense of this world. He cuts through, and he's standing on God's truth. And that's the only way to get through. It's the only way you're going to make it. Peter, when people pick up the book, I'm guessing a lot of people will pick up this book in desperation, because they've tried things and they're like, it's not working. Help me out here. But what do you expect them to maybe take away from it? Encouragement, instruction? What are the things you're going for?
I'm hoping a step back, a step back of, wait a minute, I'm parenting this because that's how my parent taught me, but to say, wait a minute, but what can I learn? What can I learn out of box that I had not thought through? That's what I'm hoping for. Also, I'm hoping that, we really step aside as parents and say, how do I help a child who needs me the most, how to love sometimes when we run out of love, is what I'm hoping that people will find in this, a different way to parent than I've normally done all the time.
So good. I appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. And appreciate you taking the time to share it with people today. You never know. Sometimes I feel like if just one person, their life just completely turns on a dime for the better, watching an interview like this, it's worth it. And I think that person's out there and watching this. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you guys out there watching. And if you know someone that you're like, oh, I know somebody needs to hear this, hit that share button and just graciously and lovingly say, I think this will help you. It will. Love is the greatest, but sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. You need to tap into God's love. Appreciate you guys being here. If you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed, do that and come back. We've got more for you next time here.